I hear a baby. Is that Kim's baby?
That's my baby.
Okay, because I was like, I thought it was mine, and then I was like, wait a minute.
No, it's mine. Hold on.
It's so funny how your mother instincts. I was like, is that my baby?
Thank God mine aren't babies anymore.
I know, and we're live. Oh my gosh, we are live. This is so amazing. Okay, and it says 10 seconds to live on the page. Okay, so we're gonna wait a little. So this is so cool.
Kim, I feel the exact way of what you're talking about, by the way.
Yes, and we're gonna, I think a lot of people are gonna really relate to that. So do not worry. We are live, guys. Welcome. How are we all doing? We're gonna give people a chance to join and register, and we'll give them a couple of minutes. And I just wanted to say hi and thank you for joining me tonight. The mic is on. I'm so hyped. I'm so hyped. I really am excited by this panel because so many people have said to me that they want to tune into this panel, and there's so many questions that they have. And I think you guys just bring such a wide range of experience. So that is really good, really, really good. And everybody, Kim, you're calling in from LA, right?
I'm in Los Angeles. Yes,
Los
sunny,
Angeles.
hot, humid.
West side.
Yeah.
I just felt like saying, and Rachel, where are you calling from?
From Connecticut.
Connecticut. And Sharon is Toronto. Like, we're all over, right? And I'm in Atlanta. The power of technology, right? Like, it is amazing, like fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. So I'm just going to give a little background information while people are joining, and just a little housekeeping rules. So this is, I think, our fourth panel that we're doing under The Mic is On with the Harborfront series. And it's being sponsored by TD Bank, my favorite bank. And I'm not just saying that. TD Bank, I want to give a shout out to TD Bank. Anyone who's watching right now, TD Bank, when I did The Kink in My Hair, my theatrical play, when I did Produced Secrets of a Black Boy, when I did How Black Mothers Say I Love You, TD Bank came on as a sponsor and gave a lot of money, right? A lot of money. And that is why I love them, because TD actually puts their money where their mouth is, literally, really and truly. And they're really about diversity. They were doing diversity before it became cool to put up a black square. So I just wanted to just say, if you are with any other bank, you need to ask them what the hell they are doing around diversity, because I know they're not doing what TD's doing, so you need to go to TD. So just tell them when you go to TD, say Trey sent me, because Trey said that you supported her work and you support diversity. So make sure you go to TD. So I want to plug TD. Love you guys. Amazing, amazing. And because we have the support of TD, we're able to do this wonderful panel virtually. We're able to pay our panel. People don't just show up for free. That's the kind of bank TD is. They believe in making sure that women get compensated for their time. So that's the bank that we have at TD and Harborfront Center. Thank you very much. I love them. Okay, cool. So that's the housekeeping rules, right? I'm your host, Trey Anthony. You guys know me as at Black Girl in Love on Instagram. And I have the most amazing panel joining us tonight. And I just want to give a little background information. One of the reasons why I wanted to do this panel, a lot of you guys know I'm a new mom. I just adopted a baby boy. Oh my gosh, yesterday was 7 months. Time just flies. This is when you're sleep deprived. Every day just feels the damn thing. Every day just rolls into the next, right? That's it. I don't even count the days anymore. I just count how many hours of sleep I get a night. That's about it. Right? That's what it has come down to. And I'm sure Kim will relate because she's also a new mom. So we'll talk about that. And especially parenting in this era of Black Lives Matter, talking about police brutality, talking about race, talking about diversity or lack of diversity, and having this little baby's little brown face looking back at me every single morning just really makes me just think just differently about my life and my purpose and what kind of world am I bringing him into. And it just something really just radically shifted for me. And I really wanted to do this panel when Harborfront gave me pretty much free range. It said, just program whatever panel you want, like whatever is of interest to you. I said, I definitely want to do a panel on parenting a Black boy in today's society and what we are facing as mothers. But I also said, I also want to do a very diverse panel of mothers, not just who are similar to myself, but mothers who have a different experience going into mothering and what that may look like. And so this is why I have invited this wonderful panel that I'm going to introduce right now. And so joining us is Sharon Madler. Hi, Sharon. Sharon, let me tell you, I think, as my grandmother would say, I've known Sharon since Jesus was a boy. Right? My grandmother would say that. Sharon, when I moved from England in grade 6 at Elmbank Middle School, Sharon was one of my first friends, right? So let's not even age us. Let's not. We'll just say we just look great. Right? But you were, I think I was in grade 6 and you were in grade 7, right? You were always a year ahead of me, right?
I was a year ahead of you, and we became fast friends since grade 6. And I used to remember that anytime you had a problem, you called me.
That's right. Sharon was my fix-it. She was my fix-it woman. And would you believe this is where I am now, Sharon, with all of the drama I used to create? So now I just write it.
I'm waiting for your phone call. It's good. We're good.
So Sharon was my solid, you know, when you have a really good solid friend, as my grandmother would say, she has her head on her shoulders. That was Sharon, right? And going along with that, Sharon, you met John when you were in high school, correct? Wasn't it high school or was it college?
No, it was the last year of college.
The last year of college, her husband, John. I've been through a million partners since you've been with John.
We've been together 27 years.
As I said, a million people I have gone through. Yes. you have been with John for 20, how many years?
27, married for 24.
I can't even wrap my head around that.
You were at the wedding. You gave a speech.
I know. I remember this. I recall this. So I am so delighted. And Sharon married a white guy. We were all shocked about that because Sharon, you used to only date pure Black. All right. And then we're like, now she's married this white dude. what happened? Right. And there she is.
Yeah.
And he's also a police officer.
Yes.
So that was the other thing. Like we all kind of like, and we come from Rexdale, right? We come from Rexdale. And for those of you who are not from Toronto, Rexdale is kind of like a working class, what could I say? Like we're working class, just up and coming neighborhood, but very much kind of like the Black people stay with the Black people, South Asians stay with the South Asians, the white stays. Would you call it that, Sharon? Like that?
I would definitely say so. And I remember having conversations with you when we were starting high school. And I said the two things I would never marry was a white guy or a cop. And,
Your
and that's
famous
exactly it.
last word.
I had a different plan.
So we are going to come back to you, Sharon, because we got a lot to talk about because a lot has changed. And you have been with this white guy and the cop for 24 years. So something must be working. And you have 3 wonderful children. And so we're going to come back to Sharon, right? Okay. The next person joining us is Kim. And Kim, pronounce your last name for me because I don't want to be that person who messes it up.
It's just fine. Cutable. It's easy to say. It's not easy to spell, but it's the story of my life. I spent a lot of time spelling.
Cutable. Okay, yeah. I'm glad I asked you because I would have totally messed that up. Yeah,
it's just fine. Not see that. It's okay.
So Kim Cutable is all the way from Los Angeles, but she's Canadian.
I am.
You are an American living in Canada, like me, so I know that experience very well. Yeah. How long have you been in Los Angeles, Kim?
I have been here since 2006. Okay. So through, a good president and then a situation.
Good president and then a situation.
Yeah.
You are so eloquent. I love that. a good, because I would have said something else.
I'm trying to keep it PC. It's Harborfront, right? I have to be mindful. So,
yes.
yeah.
So that is great. And Kim, just recently, you adopted a little boy. He is, how is it, 14 months he is now?
He's actually 17 months,
17
and
months.
he has, sleep deprivation was one thing, but they really don't tell you about potty training. And that, friends, whew, that is a whole other story. It's not a good time. We'll talk. We'll talk offline.
We'll talk, because I know what I'm looking forward to. I know what I'm really looking forward to. So I really am excited about bringing Kim to the conversation, because I want to really talk about just the whole adoption process, and then also adopting a Black boy, and if anything shifted for you and what that process was like. And now you living in America, raising this Black boy, what has come up for you. So we're going to come back to you.
Thank you.
And then we have the wonderful Rachel Everly. Did I pronounce that right? Everly?
That's right.
Rachel, let me tell you, I knew you before I knew you, because, and I'm so glad you joined this panel. I got a poem. I guess I would call it a poem. Yeah, it was a poem, right? Would you call it a poem or a piece you wrote? Yes. Someone sent it to me, and then I got the piece probably about 6 or 7 times. People kept sending it to me, right? And I was just like, oh my goodness. And it was such a powerful piece. And me being who I am, I was just like, who the hell wrote this? Who wrote this? Right? And so then I hunted you down, basically. Like, I hunted you down, because I then heard that it was written by a white woman who is raising 2 very radical activist sons. And the piece was so powerful. And we're going to go into the piece. I'm going to make you actually read the piece tonight. And I was just like, I want to bring you on this panel, because I think, and I've had several of these calls, and I think several of my friends who are Black will tell you how we've had this call where our white friends will call us and go, I didn't know. I just didn't know. And what should I do? And you were a person who actually was just doing the shit. You didn't ask nobody. You just decided, I'm going to do something. And that's what I really loved about you. Like, you weren't one of those people who was just like, I'm gonna bury my head in the sand. I'm gonna pretend that this is not happening. And I just, when I read your piece, I'm gonna talk about it, just hit me right here in the guts. And I was like, this woman gets it. She understands it. And I was like, I swear to God, I emailed every single one of my white friends who called me and said, what should I do? I said, you need to watch Rachel tonight. Rachel's going to tell you what to do. Right? I said, because I'm done telling you what to do. Rachel is doing it. So if you have any white guilt or you're doing anything else, Rachel is your person. She's going to tell you what to do, because I'm done talking. Right? So I just love, and you are calling in from, where are you calling in from?
From the East Coast, Connecticut.
Connecticut. Is other people in the East Coast Connecticut as radical as you, or are you by yourself in this?
It varies on the town, so.
And are your neighbors? As I went jogging this morning in this very affluent neighborhood, and I saw about 4 Black Lives Matter signs, and I was like, okay, I feel good about this. I said, I can live in this neighborhood. So are you one of those people who has the Black Lives Matter signs on your lawn?
Yeah, and there's not too many near me, but it's, our town is very, it's back and forth. It just depends on who you talk to. So it's all or nothing,
All or nothing. And you are definitely doing it all. So I'm so excited to have you here. And thank you. And one of the things that I loved about you was your humility, that when I asked you to come on the panel, you were like, I don't know, like, what, me? Like, I'm not doing it. And I'm like, yes, you are. And so I'm very happy to have you. So thank you for joining us tonight, right? So we are going to get into it. Before we start, the wonderful Kim said something so amazing, and I'm going to paraphrase this because I do believe it's the truth. She said something about just really standing in her truth tonight and being very aware that other people are listening. And I also said, I want people to be very aware that everybody who's speaking on the panel, this is their lived experience. This is their truth. You may agree with some things, you may disagree with some things. Some things may really truthfully resonate with you. Some things may have you thinking. And this is why it's called a dialogue. and this is why it's called a discussion. There's no wrong or right answers in this. We all are learning as we go along this pathway called life. And so I really would like to create a safe space moving forward for these wonderful women to say their piece. I really want to make sure that the audience is joining in and engaging, and the things that you feel speak to you, let us know. The things that you're questioning, let us know. And the things, if you disagree, but let's do it in a very respectful and kind manner, right? Because I may disagree with some of the things that the panel is going to say today. I don't know. They may disagree with some of the things I'm going to say, right? But I always want to make sure that we create a safe space and that people feel safe, respected, loved, and heard in everything that I do. So, and the universe will guide us in whatever message that we need to bring forth today. So that's how we're going to start. Okay. So I'm going to Sharon, my friend since Jesus was a boy, grade 6. We're only 16 now.
Oh my gosh, I know. I feel so old.
So Sharon, when you met John, right? Not only is John a police officer, but John comes from a family of officers. Like his grandfather was an officer and his father was a police officer, correct? Did I get that right?
His father's a police officer. His brother is a police officer. And himself.
Okay. All right. So it's a family of police officers. Correct. You are marrying, you come from Rexdale, where I know street code, okay, is we don't mess with the cops. We don't mess with them, right? Like let's just call it what it is, right? We don't mess with them. And you are now marrying a cop and a white guy, and then you have 3 children, a lovely daughter, and 2 biracial sons. And your son now, John, is also joining the police force, correct?
The 4th, yeah. And 3 Johns would have been on the police force, yes.
Wow. Okay. So how did you feel? Like, how was the conversation to your family, one, about marrying a white cop? And how do you as a Black woman move through the world when you hear all of this stuff about like Black Lives Matter, the cops are brutal? How do you address that in your own life?
That's a really good question. When I met my husband, he was still in the process of becoming a police officer. He was in college, I was in college, and we just found that just like with any other relationship, we just really connected. We connected on so many different things, and policing in my career wasn't one of them. We just really connected. And when we made the decision to kind of move forward, get married, have children, you're right, those are topics that it's gonna happen. I think that it would be naive to say that it's not in our household, that it's not in our circle, we don't have to think about race. The nice thing was, I wanna say, is that we were both very exposed to each other's culture to begin with. And both sets of families is something that we brought together to make sure that there was a good bonding process, because no matter what, outside influences are always going to play a role on our kids. And especially now, with any conversation, especially raising biracial kids, they're not easy conversations to have. They're conversations that, you know, we're going to have to take time to put our side out there, and we don't always agree. He's a police officer, I'm a Black woman. We don't always agree because we see different things first. But at the same time, we have a really good understanding of things when it comes to explaining to each other, because respect and ignorance is something that we kind of don't tolerate in this house. We felt like it was really important that my husband knows that, for one, I do stand for Black Lives Matter. And I also stand for policing. I see the need in my household where both of them are important. I understand that it's something that is evolving, but we have those conversations. Like, my husband is the first one to admit that George Floyd's murder was a murder. He doesn't, you know, excuses for it. He knows what is out there, and I like that. And at the same time, me, where I've worked in social services, I know what it's also like to not always have the full story when the public is told. So sometimes I have to wait for the full story in order to make a decision on how I feel about things.
Okay.
Yeah. As well, I was actually gonna just add, Trey, that because you mentioned the different generations of policing.
Yes.
Like when my father-in-law started, he was straight out of high school. That's how they hired him, straight out of high school.
Okay.
When my husband got on, he had to get a Bachelor of Art degree before he was allowed to be a police officer. And now with my son, he has a diploma in addiction and mental health. So all three are learning the system a little bit more each time.
Okay. And I'm going to come back to you, Sharon. And one of the questions that I want you to think about, because I think this is a conversation and that I'm going to also bring up with Kim, is I know from myself, having a Black brother, having nephews, and now having a Black son, we all hear about the talk that we have with our Black children around, if the police pull you over, these are the things that you need to do. And so the question I'm going to leave you with, and for you to think about, is in your household, was it your husband who had that conversation with your kids? Or was it you as a Black woman who had that conversation with your kids? Or was it both of you who sat them down and said, this needs to happen? Because at the end of the day, as much as their father is a police officer, if they're getting pulled over, they're getting pulled over as a Black boy, right? And I say this to a lot of my friends who have biracial children when they're like, well, they're biracial. And I usually sometimes hear this a lot from white mothers who have biracial children. And they're like, well, I don't want them to just identify as Black. And I say, okay, you can live in that fairy tale, but when they are pulling over your biracial child, they're not going, oh, I think 50% of you is white, so I'm going to treat you a little bit better. They're pulling over a Black boy. So you need to have these kind of conversations with your biracial children. As much as it makes you uncomfortable, they need to walk through the world prepared that the world is not seeing them as biracial, right? So that is something that I really want to have a discussion with you, and I'm going to jump into with Kim, because you walk through the world as a biracial woman, Kim, right?
Yeah.
And
it's interesting. I do in Canada.
Oh, and in America, what is it? Do they see you as Latina?
In America, I actually feel, and so much of my work in Canada was as an artist or a creative was talking about being mixed. And I don't say race because I believe there is one race. It's a human race, and there's all kinds of new information and research that talks about the lack of real genetic evidence between races, and that it's a social construct. So we won't go there. But the next piece is that in the United States, I actually felt like it was irresponsible in a way, or not. I identify as Black here. I say POC Black. I say person of color Black. And because I feel like I need to be contributing to the conversation from that standpoint. And now especially raising a Black son.
Yes.
There for him, it has to be total congruence. And so from my perspective, and it's interesting, one of my mentors is a mixed woman who identifies as Black, and when I was younger, I didn't really understand that. I was like, I don't understand, like, why? But you're mixed. You should say you're mixed. You should say you're both. Because and I was raised in a white family with my grandmother who is white, and so who was my everything. So from that perspective, I that was how I spoke about myself, not white but mixed. But that understanding, that experience was that. And then here, again, he's Black, and so I am Black. And I do really feel pride in that and confidence in that, in a way, interestingly, that his confidence. This conversation about the talk
Yes.
is a really complicated one for me, because, and I'm glad I have some time to figure it out, because when I look at my son and he's enamored with himself in the mirror, loves himself in the mirror, loves his face, blows kisses, is like, I mean, he's so awesome. And I thought, gosh, I wonder if I loved myself that much
Yes.
at that age, because the conflicts around race were introduced in my family, right? By extended family and by parent thinking that they were doing well in having conversations in a strange way, or not having the conversation. I don't see color, like that one, right?
Yes.
But I think I don't want to be introducing him to a broken culture, because I look at it from a spiritual perspective. He comes in whole. He is whole. Why am I going to train him to identify with any judgment that comes from people who don't understand his value when he so intrinsically does? And so from my perspective, I am waiting for him. You know, we're in our little household mode. We have a doula. I'm keeping him preserved so that when he goes out into the world, he's like, these people are whacked. Like, he knows his value, right?
Yeah.
And I actually have a friend who has 4 Black sons, and she's never had the talk with them about.
And is she a Black woman?
She's a Black woman. She's a Black woman with 4 sons and a daughter, and I actually am, and I know it can be considered irresponsible not to have the talk, but at the same time, part of me is like, I don't want him going out with that fear and focus on that conversation.
It's so funny, because I totally get, because my nephew right now is 6 years old, and he has an understanding of what's going on. Also too, because my mother, his grandmother, is glued to CNN like 24/7, and Chance is sitting there with my grandmother watching CNN. And my sister said, when all of this was happening a couple of weeks ago, she was driving in a car and a police officer pulled up behind them. And Chance said, "Oh no, I don't want to die today, Mom." And she said that's when she realized that he was getting all of this information. And she said there was a part of her that was thinking, I need to protect him. I don't want him to know all of this that is happening, but he's getting it from somewhere. So she was like, she's trying to have this balance of how much information she gives him, but still making him, because one of the things I always say, stop kicking our children out of childhood. They need to have a childhood. And I feel sometimes as Black children, because we wish to protect them, because we also know that they are going to walk through the world where not everybody's going to be kind and loving to them and just judge them based on their character, a lot of times I feel we kick them out of their childhood way too soon. Right?
And I agree with that. And I felt like, as an example, in decorating his room, I'm looking for images of joyful Black boys.
Yes.
And I'm in an art gallery in South Carolina, and I'm asking for these images. And the woman, she's a Black gallerist, she shows me a couple of them, but she said, she started the gallery for that reason, because she had 2 sons, and she felt like there weren't images of them portrayed. Like, what I see a lot of is like sorrow, or they're playing, but they're playing in like the junkyard, right? Like there's they're not on a yacht, like they're not in their jet, or they're playing, like they're not like in their backyard, their groomed backyard, which, we're not broke. We're not doing broke. I'm single and I adopted him, but we're not doing broke single mom, right? So we want joy. I want balloons. I need the balloons.
On the yacht.
Yeah. Well, sorry, as I lose my head, I want to see Black boy with his ducks, with his like balls, with his dogs, with his, the general children's scenes, and we're not seeing that. And so from my perspective, I am not bringing him, if I believe that there's a great quote from Buckminster Fuller. I wrote it down because I don't want to butcher it, but it's like, in order to change an existing program, you don't struggle to change the problematic model, you create a new model and you make the old one obsolete. And that's the place that I come at it from in my child rearing, is that I look at this child, he knows his value, again, fully connected to source, like is just so in love with himself and with life. It is my job to, if I look into his eyes, to not get sucked into, there's been a couple of times I've been like bawling. I've tried, like Trayvon and then Ahmaud Arbery, don't even get me started, but just like bawling uncontrollably. And when I go to see him, I'm reminded, no, I don't want to intermingle that fear with him, because that is not what he came here to do. And from even a deeper ancestral perspective, I feel like he is here in this moment to be joyful. In the States especially, and he is American, we've had 400 years of slavery. No more in this moment. This child is here for Black boy joy. That's what he's here for.
Oh, I love that. Hold that thought, Kim. I'm going to come back to you. We're going to talk about some Black boy joy. I love that. This boy is here. That's a tweetable moment. That's an Instagram moment. This boy is here for Black boy joy. I'm going to put that on. I don't know where I'm going to put it, but I'm going to put it somewhere. I'm going to put it somewhere. This boy is here for Black boy joy. Okay, I'm going to go to Rachel. Rachel, girl. Oh, man. I just love what you are doing. And I wanted to start, because we talked in the beginning about how I found you was through this piece that you had written. And it got sent to me around 6 or 7 times. Different people sent, because they know how radical I am, right? Black power, right? And people kept saying, you gotta read this piece, you gotta read this piece. And then I just loved it so much that I started sending it out to people. And then me, who I am, I'm a big researcher. Anytime I love something, I always want to know who wrote it. And then I hunted you down and I found you on Instagram and I invited you. And I think it would be really wonderful for people who are not familiar with the piece to hear the piece. And because what I want to ask you is, what was going on in your head and in your life at that moment when you wrote the piece? So first of all, let us hear the piece and see the piece. And then we got this working, so we know it's going to pop up on the screen, right, Rachel? We're going to do this. If Rachel's like me, technology always fails me in these moments, but no, Rachel's doing it. There she goes. All right, Rachel, we did it, girl.
So I call this Skittles, which it didn't have a title till after I was done, but that's what it's called now. So if my son went for some Skittles and didn't return, or played in the park and didn't return, or went for a jog and didn't return, or sold cigarettes on a corner and didn't return, or went to a party and didn't return, or reached for his license and didn't return, or resisted arrest and didn't return, and with his last dying breath called out my name, I would set the world on fire and let it all burn.
And why this struck me, and when I read the piece, is I'm in Atlanta, and there's a Target, which is like, when you're a new mom, you just have joy in these little moments, right? And me and my son, we have great joy in walking to the Target with our masks on and shopping in this Target all day, right? And so I sometimes walk around and I feel like I've actually gone somewhere when I'm in the Target. And the Target got burnt down in the riots that were happening in Atlanta. And I heard some of my neighbors, I live in quite an affluent part of Atlanta, and they were like, oh, I just don't understand why they would burn down the Target. I just don't understand why they're burning down their neighborhoods. I don't understand the violence. I don't understand this. And so when I read your piece, and especially it coming from a white woman, I was like, you understand the rage of what Black people are feeling around just this whole thing of we don't matter, that we have no value. And I kept saying to people, you're putting more value on the Targets than you are putting on Black people who are losing their lives. And this is the part where I'm just done explaining, right? I said, this is a community who is raging. because you are not hearing us when we are speaking, you're not hearing us when we are kneeling, you're not hearing any other thing. And I said, and if your child, and that's what happened to me when I read your piece, I said, you were able to put yourself in the place of a Black mother to say, if this happened to my son, you're damn right I would burn the shit down. And so I want to know what was going on in your mind and in your life at that moment when you wrote that piece.
I mean, a lot of what you're saying, I wrote it a few days after George Floyd was murdered. The protests were getting more media coverage, and what I was seeing in my Facebook feed and Instagram feed were people who had been silent about his murder, but now wanted to have a conversation about what's the right way to protest, right? That this isn't the right way. There's a better way. And it was people being more concerned, like you said, Trey, about the destruction of property and not the destruction of his life and his family's life. And the other thing, that the reason that it reads the way it does is that it took me 10 minutes to write, which I think is really devastating in the fact that in 10 minutes, I could name that many instances, that many stories, that many names, that many families that will never be the same. So it was really two things. It was this is my response, I think, to people who say this isn't the right way, as if there's a right way to protest 400 years of injustice, right? Like there's no right way. And thinking that maybe if you could put yourself in any one of these parents' shoes, then you understand what it feels like. And what would you do? Wouldn't you be in the streets? Wouldn't you be in the streets if your 12-year-old was playing in the park and he never came back from that? And so, yeah, I think that's kind of where I was at, is just trying to reach maybe people's humanity and just not even, I didn't know if anybody would read it, but for me, it was, this is what I would be doing. Like I would be burning the streets down. This is the scream that we can't just keep screaming. People aren't hearing. Maybe they'll listen to fire. Maybe they'll listen, I don't know what it's going to take.
Oh, I love that. That's another quote. Maybe they'll listen to fire. I love that. That's the second part of the poem. You know that, right, Rachel? Yeah. That's the second piece we're writing. Maybe they'll listen to fire. Clock that. Send me my royalties after. Okay. Yes. And Rachel, would you consider yourself an activist, or do you say in this moment you became an activist? Like, what is your background in history?
Yeah, I think generally, yes. My background's in sociology, so I've studied a lot about, race as a social construct, that kind of thing. I also do a lot of volunteer work in gun violence prevention with an organization. We know that Black Americans are disproportionately impacted by police violence, which often involves a gun. Black Americans are 10 times more likely to die by gun homicide than white Americans. So I have been doing that kind of work for 2.5 years. The intersection is when police brutality, intersects there, not specifically in Mr. Floyd's case, but intersects with gun violence. So yeah, it's not a new thing. I think the new thing is really thinking about how I use a platform, how we use our platforms, right? Because they had no platform. I'm a mom in Connecticut who's a stay-at-home mom with 100 Instagram followers. I wrote this thing and now so many people have seen it.
Because I think it got over 30,000 likes or something like that. It got so many likes. I remember that, right? That everybody was sending it.
Yeah, a lot of people sharing it that I don't even know, so it's out there. But I think the idea that we all have a platform, whether or not it's big or small, we all have one. And I don't want to take up space anymore with mine, right? Yeah. I want to continue to shine a spotlight. And what's so interesting is because of my privilege as a white woman, I can turn it off. I can just be like, I'm peripherally aware of terrible things that are happening, but I'm not going to be involved, and I can live my life and just kind of know what's going on, but I don't want to live that way anymore. Yeah. So that's been the shift, right? Like I'm not going to turn that off.
And I think that is so important, because this is what I say to a lot of my white friends. I say, that is your privilege, that you can just say, oh, that's really bad, but that doesn't affect me. And I was saying to them, I think the reason why this has become as big, because I definitely feel we're in another revolution. I said, it's because now white people have become enraged. right? It kind of sitting back going, wow. And I said, and I think where they became enraged and people could not look away, and I could not bring myself to watch the video, but I know this is what happened, is when George Floyd called out for his mother. And I said, I feel that is a cry that anyone who has a mother, who came from a mother, or has a child, you cannot look away from that. That is the most basic human cry that all of us have called for our mothers at some point in our lives. And I think that is what got the whole world kind of saying, we can't look away from this anymore. This is a man who was crying for his mother, a grown man. And I think this is why we are where we are now, because white people cannot look away from this anymore. You know, and I keep saying to all of my friends who are white, I'm saying this is the only way change is going to come, is if you start to use your platform to say, wow, I need to do something as well, right? Because they're not going to listen to me as a Black person. They're going to really start to listen to other white people, will listen to other white people. And that is just the truth of the matter. And so I really think that's why we are where we are. And I want to come back to you and ask you this question, because we're going to shift into how we talk to our sons, right? What kind of conversations you are raising two white boys, and I'm going to show their picture when I come back to you with their Black Lives Matter at the rally. And I want to know what kind of conversations you are also having with your sons in your household. And I'm going to go back to Sharon right now to talk about what was the conversation you had with your boys, Sharon? Did you have the talk with them, or was it your son? I mean, was it your husband? Or was there a talk? Maybe I'm just assuming there was a talk. Was there a talk that happened in your household?
There was, because I think that the one thing is that I've raised the kids to understand how the world views them. I've never been naive to the fact that if, you know, someone pulls them over, what they see when they see my kids. So that was always important to put out there. When Kim was talking about raising her son and knowing what it is and images that look like him, I'm right there with her. That's what I did. My kids are 21, 22, and 23 now. And it was really important to find the dolls that look like them, go to the stores and get, you know, the little bill books for bedtime stories and stuff like that. So right from the very beginning, we raised them knowing what they looked like, as well as raising them around police, around gun safety. So they don't know anything different. I think, especially in my world, it's really important to say that there are so many Black, white police officers that kneel for everything as well. I watch it, I see it, I know it, I, you know, have those conversations. So when we were talking, I think it was something, when you talked about who did it, I think it was more me, because
and what was the conversation you had with them? Like, what did you say? And how old were your boys at that time?
I think obviously probably driving age, so 16. Uh-huh. And we kind of always told them right from the very beginning, if you're pulled over, couple things. 1, don't lie. 2, don't argue. 3, you know, don't run, don't struggle. We always raised them to contact us if they needed it, and to get the badge number and the name of the person pulling them over. Mm-hmm. So they knew all of that information, and all 5 of us have been pulled over. All 3 of my kids, either by themselves, or me by myself, or my husband by himself, or all together. And we all—
Did you guys? Because I remember watching. I think it was an interview Dwayne Wade had. About, because he has 3 boys with Gabrielle Union, and they live in this very affluent white neighborhood. And he said one of the things that he said to his boys is to tell them, oh, my father is Dwayne Wade, who's the basketball player, right? And he said, use whatever you can. Did you say to your boys to say, my father is a police officer?
You know
Because
what?
I know I would say that. Like if
Okay,
I
well, you know what? It's very honest to know that from the second that we got married, and do you remember how the license, you'd fold them and be two pieces, and right away, I will honestly tell you, I have my husband's card in the front. So when someone sees my license, they see his card right away. My brother-in-law's card at the back, and my father-in-law. And the conversation does sometimes shift. The
yes.
conversation, I would say all the time, it always shifts, because I do see that before they see black, they see blue.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's why we made sure that we, like you said, we equipped them right from the beginning that they're going to see blue first. So make sure they know that you are with the blue, so that they're not just worrying about you being black.
And that is true. And I've seen the difference. I tell this story when I sometimes do my diversity training talks, that I did a talk at Harvard University. And when I did the talk at Harvard, they gave me this shirt that says Harvard University on it. And I got pulled over once. I was driving to Florida, and I got pulled over by the police, and I was wearing my Harvard shirt. And the police officer came up, and I could tell he was really just out to get me. Like I can't even remember what I was doing, but I was definitely not speeding. Anybody who knows me knows I drive like a grandmother, right? And so when he pulled me over, I was like, seriously, like, let's not. You see a black girl in a really nice car, and you're deciding you could pull her over. So I said, okay. And then he came over, and he was like, can I see your license and registration? And then he saw my shirt, and he said, oh, you went to Harvard? And I said, yes, I did go to Harvard.
Good for you.
Because I did technically go to Harvard. I did not complete. And the whole thing just changed. Like his whole response to me changed. And so I do think, like, education wise, I know people's response to me is different with my accent here in the US. And I could definitely see a police officer's response would be a lot different if they also know, as you said, you're with the blue, right?
Right.
So,
In that moment, it's like you said, just like, it's unfortunate that they have to do that, obviously,
yeah.
because a lot of families don't have that luxury. And there have been times where my sons have gotten tickets, and the first thing their dad says is, did you show them my card? That is one of the first things he said, because he knows that the mindset would have been a bit different if he had shown him his card.
True. Okay. I'm going to go to Kim. Kim, I wanted to ask you, Kim, about, because I was in the adoption process myself. And one of the things that people asked me about was I going to adopt a biracial child, and around race. And I wanted to ask you, Kim, was it ever a question for you around adopting outside of your race or adopting a biracial child? Or did you always know you were going to adopt a Black child? And did gender even play into that? Because the stats, especially in public adoption, we know that the stats say that Black boys usually are the last to be adopted.
I didn't
right?
know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so Black boys, they say, are the last, then Black girls, and then before them is biracial children. So white children are the most in demand, biracial children, then Black girls, and then Black boys are usually the last. So that was something when we went in the adoption process, I really wanted to make sure that we adopted a Black boy, because I said they are always the last to be chosen. And that was something that just really stuck with me around, if I have to choose, I'm going to choose them. And I want them to know that I chose them over and over again. Yeah. So for you, did that play into culture, gender, race?
Like a couple of things. I oddly always kind of, if I was going to see visions of the future, just kind of think about the future, I always kind of thought I had a Black son, which was interesting because I'd never had a Black boyfriend at that point. So I was like,
Sharon just messed it up, eh?
I'm like, I don't know where this kid is coming from, because this is like this, I don't know where this is coming from. And then I I knew I was going to adopt a boy. I wanted a boy for sure. And then it just kind of became apparent to me. I didn't know that statistic. I learned a lot. I went foster training first before I did adoption training. So I learned a lot about the school to prison pipeline.
Yes.
And just to pick up on what Rachel learned with the gun
For
violence,
our
which
audience who are watching who may not be familiar with the school to prison pipeline, can you just give us a quick
it's
summary
really,
of what
and
that
we're
is?
seeing a little bit of it in Canadian news now with this idea of bringing Black children into general classes instead of advanced classes. This is very similar in the United States, where kids are put into trades immediately, or they are ticketed, especially in the South. I mean, there's a whole other system in the South, but where they are, for minor offenses end up in prison. And we see this time and time again, like perhaps possession of marijuana, which we know is okay in Canada, or perhaps possession of something else. And they're in prison for years and years and years, working for, I don't want to say Target, but working for like these mass manufacturers for dollars, pennies on the dollar to do the work. They're in the private prisons, and they are actually the employees there. And it's a culture that is supported. Ava DuVernay's documentary is a great one.
13, yeah.
To look at if you wanted to learn about some of that issue. And I knew that I wanted a Black son. I kind of was, and there were certainly moments where I thought, is this right for me to do? Do I have the ability to do this? This always goes to my own questioning, my own worry about things like, am I going to do right by him? Am I going to be in service to him? Also just being a mom. And a couple of women who I spoke to who were white were about, well, who else is going to do it? And I kind of thought to myself, I guess so. And again, to this point of the not being chosen, it's so interesting, this perspective thing, because in my mind, I'm like, well, that's my first choice.
Yes.
So,
that was like for me,
so for me, a lot of my own life too was really about ignoring, and that's the game that I play, ignoring the statistics of what I'm supposed to do, so that I can just fly under the radar and do what I need to do. And so that's kind of, and then come to a point of visibility and then let myself do what I need to do. So I get this, what other people are going to see. But I also get that we as human beings spend so much time engulfed and worried in that, and it has nothing to do with us. Other people's hate, other people's whatever has nothing to do with us. So
do you have fears right now, though, Kim? Do you have fears?
Oh, in this moment? Oh my gosh. If you were to
say your 2 fears right now of raising a Black son, what would they be?
I mean, he's going to go for Skittles. Right? It's like Trayvon Martin. I mean, literally, I'm in the sense of, I interviewed Shannon Watts, who runs Moms Demand Action here in the United States, which unfortunately has become much bigger than the NRA, thank God. But, stand your ground laws disproportionately affect people of color.
Yes.
We've seen this kind of copycat stuff happening. We see the Ku Klux Klan here in ways that, my little Canadian soul, after this president was elected and they did their morning walk. Yes. And I was like, I don't have a frame of reference for that. We pride ourselves on our multiculturalism in Canada. We certainly have issues, but I'm like, what the F is this? Like, who are these people? These people are
I think
nuts.
Especially as a Canadian moving to America, for me with the gun stuff, I was just in shock. That is one of the reasons why I'm seriously thinking about moving back to Canada, because I remember when I moved to Atlanta, all of my neighbors came over and they were like, well, we're going to bring you to the gun shop and you need to get a gun, little lady. You're here by yourself. And I was like, I'd never seen a gun. I'd never touched a gun. And when I expressed this to them, I was like, no, I'm not going to have a gun in my house. Like, I'm just against it. And they were like, oh, she's a socialist. She's Canadian. And I was just like, no, I've just never vaccine and I don't want a gun in my house.
They love their guns. They love their guns, right? And so, and I mean, even the liberal, I mean, I've been in some liberal women's groups and the gun conversation comes up and I'm like, how have I entered the twilight zone here, right?
Yeah.
So I had a grandfather who hunted, so I've come to this kind of uneasy acceptance
around
and working with people who are liberal to change gun laws to be safe gun laws. I'll take that. Like, I'll go there because I don't think you could ever get them to give up their guns. So I'm going to go there. But again, to that point, I too am like, I'm out of here. Like,
you're thinking about moving. You are thinking about.
Oh my God, moving. Yeah. I mean, I would not watch the George Floyd thing. I'm not gonna watch things that are gonna impact my soul in that way. I do not need to see that. I understand that him calling for his mama, like all of that is like, I can imagine it. I don't even need to see it. Yeah. But what I do need to happen is, and I am calling on all of my clients, anybody who is white, to step up and to say something. And in fact, I know there's a lot of that sort of cutoff culture or, cancel culture. And I'm really feeling that these days. I'm like, because your silence tells me so much.
That you don't care. I think that
you don't need to say anything. You're not saying anything.
Silence. It's the
your silence just speaks volumes. And for me, I want to know who I'm. I had on Facebook recently, longtime childhood friend, dad, post a video about, with other black men kind of saying, oh, well, black racism is not really a thing. It's kind of like, and I was like, I can't even look at him the same right now.
No, I hear you. I think social media will tell you a lot about who people are and what they stand for. And I'm going to quickly jump to Rachel, because I see on your social media, one of the things that I love seeing is your sons, your little white sons with their Black Lives Matter place cards or protest cards. What do you call it? Protest signs. Do you have a picture of that, Rachel? I'd love people to see that. Would you be able to bring that up? Technology, don't fail us now. We're doing so good. There's the Skittles. There's Rachel's son, Black Lives Matter. And then there's another one where they're sitting on the pavement, which I love. No justice, no peace. I just love that. And Rachel, I wanted to know, what was the conversation? Was this your son's first march that they ever attended, or have they been marching before and gone to protests?
So I'm very involved with Moms Demand Action for Guns in America. So they have been to those types of things, and the Wear Orange event every summer, which, highlights survivors of gun violence. So it wasn't their first, but their first Black Lives Matter one. So the way that we ended up there in the middle of a pandemic, it was the first time out of the yard in like 93 days. But, and
we're going to march at Black Lives Matter, God damn it.
We're doing this because whenever I talk to them about race, I think the one thing is it feels very scary, right? But I think the main thing is just do it. And again, that's
what does the conversation look like when I talk to them about race? Like, what do you say? Because I'm really curious to hear what happens in your household. Like, what do you say?
So I say that people in the world, come in all colors and shapes and sizes, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful, but people will be treated differently because of those things. And so we have to also recognize that. So I feel like a lot of times white parents are in the, we don't see color, just be kind, treat everyone equally. And that is true. And also we have to address, the underlying structure of the country that we live in and how it was built, right? Yeah. So I always, in any discussion of race, end with talking about what it means to be white. What does that mean for them to be white in America? And how are they going to be perceived differently? How are their experiences going to be different? And they'll never have to think about some things that a little boy the same age as them who's Black might have to think about. The reason that I want to talk about privilege so young with them, and some would argue too young, that maybe I'm
kicking them out of childhood.
Maybe, but because I want them to use their privilege, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like they cannot use it if they don't acknowledge it, if they don't know what it is. And so what I always tell them is to be loud. Don't ever be quiet. If you see something is wrong, then say it. And if you see someone is being treated wrong, then yell it really loud, because your voice might be the one that they listen to. Right? Because of the way you look, your voice might be heard. So never be silent. And so I feel like that is why maybe we do have heavier conversations than a 6 and a 9-year-old are really, ready for. But
have you seen your children be like activists and spoken up when they see like racism or somebody not treated well? Like, have you seen them actually say, hey?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely will speak up. And very funnily, they're into Minecraft. So my son created a world and he came to me and he wanted to know, Mom, I have these workers and they all look like this and I look different. He was very concerned about the justice of his Minecraft world. Was he treating everybody equitably? Was everybody getting their fair share? And it's kind of funny, but he's really like, this is how he's processing these things.
Yes.
Like, how can I make sure that this system, this world I'm creating is fair to everybody?
Yeah.
And so, I really do think they are taking it in. But so that's how we ended up at the protest in the middle of a pandemic, is because I didn't feel like I could have these conversations about how we have to use our voices and then we stay home. Right.
I love that, because that's what it's about. It's about actually putting your beliefs now into action, right? Because a lot of people have been talking about how all of these different companies and various people are putting up these black squares, right? And they call it like performance allyship, instead of actually doing things. And people are getting called out left, right, and center about it, right? So I love that you're actually actively saying, no, we're actually going out in the streets, we're having these conversations, and we're going to make our protest signs, and we're going to be part of this movement. And I think I read under one of your pictures when you said, I want my sons to know we were on the right side of justice. When they look back, that they will know what we stood for as a family. And that just made me go, oh, yes.
Right.
I was like, I was like, I don't know if you know, Rachel, but you and me are gonna be friends for life after this, right? I don't know if you know this, but you're my girl now. Okay. All right.
I think I had said that I never want them to question where we stood. Right. Yes. The answer is we stood together. We were together. And so that's why.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh my God, we're nearly coming to an end. But I know Harborfront is saying it's 8:30, but I'm gonna go for just a little bit, Harborfront. It's okay. TD loves me and they're going to pay me overtime just for a little bit, Harborfront, because this conversation is so damn good. So I'm going to ask my last questions of a couple of you guys, right? And I want to make sure. And Rachel, someone just said that your poem brought tears to their eyes, an audience member. Yeah, it hits you right there in your gut. I'm going to go to Sharon, my longtime friend. Sharon, because I know you're from Rexdale. We're from the hood. Rexdale for life.
Our Jamaican single moms.
Right. So being from Rexdale, I know Rexdale people come for you hard, right? I know Rexdale people, we don't play. Yeah. And I want to know, have you had any backlash or animosity from the Black community when they know, number one, you're married to a white guy, and number two, you're married to a cop? Like, have you, or does the conversation maybe shift when people are talking about, oh, all cops are racist, and then they're like, oh, we didn't know we weren't among family, because now, right? Because they're like, oh, you're with the blue, right? Yeah. Like, have you experienced anything like that?
All the time. And I think, like you said, the biggest thing is that people, to be honest, because the exposure that I have had personally with the police is different than what a lot of people have gone through. Like, because he's the one that comes home in tears when, something happens to a child, or he's almost lost his life saving somebody from jumping off a building, or, he was doing a pay duty at a library and he saw a little Black boy that had been there for 4 days and he went out and got a McDonald's. Like, I hear these sides of things as well. So when when someone's going off, it's like what everyone says, it's about ignorance and education. I feel that, and that's what, when I asked my son about this topic, both of them, what do they think, when it comes to Black and police and everything, they said, Mom, I know there's good and bad in everything. That was one of their biggest things. I know there's good and bad in everything. And the same way that people will be upset that I married a white person, these are the same people who have gone through several marriages where I'm still on the first one.
All right, preach it, girl.
And
I'm gonna find me a white guy. Maybe that's been a problem.
I'm waiting.
Guys, I'm only teasing. You guys know I'm back for the other team.
And I thought I did too, Trey. I thought I did too. But you know what? What you've shown me is that love isn't about certain things. Kim has her beautiful Black son, Rachel's teaching her kids about being these things. Love is so different. We shouldn't put love into a box. And the most criticism, unfortunately, that I get is from Black people. And it's about the races and
what do people say? Like, what will they say? Will they say like what have they, like, what's been the most blatant comment that you've had? Like, you're just like, I can't believe they would even say that.
I've had that I no longer think I'm Black because I've married a white person.
Oh, okay. Yes.
That I don't love being a Black woman. I've forgotten that side of me. I've gotten, what we were in Vegas and 3 Black men were in the elevator behind us, and I got told that I don't like my race anymore, and how could I have done this to our race? And this was probably just 3 years ago. And
Sharon, let me ask you, because I know I'm aware of time. When stuff happens like George Floyd in your house, when your husband comes home from his job, are you having conversations about it, or is it kind of like, I do this for a living, I don't want to talk about this right now? Or is it, because I do this for a living, I really want to talk about this?
I think that with anything, especially me knowing the social services, you got to know the right time to bring up conversations.
Yes.
In the heat of something is not always the right time, but when we're having an intimate conversation, I need to know how he feels. The same way he needs to know how I feel. Because I shouldn't always assume that because he's batting blue, he doesn't understand Black. And that's the biggest thing for me, is that when he says that blatantly was a murder, I know we're on the same side. We're on this, and that is probably how a relationship has survived, is we know when to be behind each other for certain things.
For sure.
And when we're not always behind each other, we know to respect the other person's decision. And the biggest thing is that we've raised our kids loving both cultures. They're the kind of kids that in geography class, Jamaica was their country. When it came to drawing their family seal, they were drawing a Canadian flag with a Jamaican flag. They want to get their Jamaican passports. There's never a Thanksgiving or a Christmas that doesn't include oxtail or curry-go, right?
Okay, well, just make sure you save my plate this year, brethren. Anyways, let me go to Kim. So you okay? Because I'm coming for the little ox, and I know your mother can cook. Yeah, and I know your mother loves me, so you tell her I'm coming for my oxtail. Kim.
Yeah.
I know you know about some oxtail and Jamaican food in Toronto, so we're gonna do this. But Kim, I'm
all about the roti. Actually, I would rather have the goat roti. Sorry,
the goat roti. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, and I love. It has to be boneless because I can't.
Boneless is good. Yeah, the boneless is the best. Yeah.
Yes. So Kim, I wanted to, because of time, and I really want to, really try and bring some positivity and Black boy joy. And I want to know, because sometimes I have my little baby and I'm putting him to sleep and he's falling asleep, and I look at his perfect little mouth and his little nose, and I love him and I hold him. And I say this also to my nephew, my first nephew, Chance, who's 6. I say, I'm the most gentle and kind to him and to my little boy, because I know the world is not going to be kind to them. So sometimes I let him get away, especially Chance, with murder. And I should say murder, but I let him get away with so much stuff because I want him to know and expect for people to treat him in a gentle manner, and know. And I have this rule too, that whenever he calls me, I will pick up the phone, because I want him to know that his Auntie Trey will always be there. So even if I pick it up and go, you know what, Chance, I'm in the middle of jogging or I'm on a call, but I want him to know to expect people to show up for him. And so I wanted to ask you, what is your biggest wish that you want for your child right now? Like, if you were to say, this is what I want for him, what would that be?
Yeah, I think that wish is for him. And my wish for him is that he always holds that, again, he knows his value. So he knows it. He knows it. There's no doubt in my mind. He knows, he sees his value. I used to sing from the song Wicked, Unlimited, to him. You are unlimited, when he was a baby. And he loved that, right? He loved that song. And I tell him he's handsome. I tell him he's a beautiful soul. He like lights up. Like he knows, right? So it's so complicated for me because I believe my most important job is to hold the space for him to be whoever his soul wants to be.
Oh, I love that.
And I do believe that, which is why I really try not to give him my fear.
Yes.
And from I work on a lot of transformational work with women, and the whole thing is you get what you focus on.
True.
So I'm focused on him realizing his highest and greatest good from the perspective of who he is. And so I really do work at staying out of the world, the broken parts of the world, and coming at it from the space of if he knows sort of what is in integrity and in alignment, and that he'll approach conversations from that place. And one thing I hope it comes across well is this idea that we have a leader in the United States who was delusional enough to believe that he could be president.
Yes,
right?
And here he is.
He comes in with such force and focus. You look at it too with the people who took down the Trade Center, right? With such force and focus, they come in for these acts of, acts of going to go there, right? And then he moves people who aren't thinking about it too much. So I know there are so many women in this moment, so many moms in this moment who have turned on their power.
Yes.
And who are holding space, who are believing, and this is where we have to shift, I believe that by the time our boys get to 18, which is why I love the conversation Rachel's are having now, because I think the talk should be with white police officers, with white boys, with other. I think that's where the talk should be.
Yeah,
right?
That's where the change is going to come.
That's where
the power.
But the point is, if we can hold space and be as delusional that we are going to. I don't believe in fighting against the system. Sorry, buddy. Yeah. But we're going to transform the system. We're going to build a totally new one.
Yes.
That's where we have to be.
That's where
I really believe it. And a reminder, if that guy could become president,
then what could we do with our own power and with us standing in our
with that
yes.
Come on.
Thank you, Kim.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Rachel, I'm gonna go to you really quickly because I get this question all of the time, and I just wanted to ask you before we wrap it up for the night, is if there is a white mom at home right now and she's saying, I just don't know where to start and what to do, what can I do to make a change? What 2 pieces of advice would you give to them? If there's somebody watching right now who's a white mom who's like, I just don't know what to say. And I always hear this from some of my friends who are white. They're just like, I just don't want to offend anybody. And I feel like if I do something, people are going to get offended, and I'm not sure if I'm the one who's supposed to say something. What kind of advice would you give to someone like that?
I guess I would say it's a motto of mine because I'm afraid of everything. But I always say, be afraid, but do it anyway. So, we can't let any fear that we have keep us from anything, really. But I mean, you have to be willing to say the wrong thing. Maybe, and maybe it comes out wrong. But I don't think that the fear of saying the wrong thing should keep you from using your voice. In regards to our kids, I mean, there's so many books out there, small changes that you can make, or just including books that have people who don't look like your kids. Make that normal. Like, that's a very quick, easy change that you can make that really has an impact. If we only live in our bubbles and we only see people like ourselves, then the other people, we don't recognize their humanity. We have to normalize seeing people who don't look like ourselves. And you can live in the middle of the country and not even know a Black person, but you can order books and watch shows that do give your kids more awareness of people other than themselves.
So true. So very true. Guys, women, I told you this was going to go really quickly. Didn't I tell you? And we could do like a part 2, a part 3, a part 4. You are amazing women. I just want to quickly, do any of you guys have a business that you want people? I know, Kim, you do amazing work. I know, Sharon, you do real estate. I know, Rachel, you're involved in a lot of activist organizations. So please just give a quick plug where people can find you. Sharon, where can people find you? And just tell them what you do, because I just want to promote.
I've been a real estate agent for the last 13 years after finishing up a decade with Children's Aid. And they can find me at Remax Crosstown in Toronto.
All right. Thank you, Sharon. And are you on social media at all?
I am on social media. Phone number and all. I'm sure I'll get lots of messages.
Okay, good. And Kim, I know you are super talented. You do everything. So where can people find you and what do you do?
Thank you. Yes, so I am a producer and writer, and you can find me at Voice Lessons Podcast. I do have a podcast that's...
I didn't know that. What's the name of
Yes,
that?
I do. It is about creative women. It's really for creative women who become unexpected founders and helping them to, which is kind of like me, coming from the arts and being an artist, but really building a platform, and which I love that Rachel said even 100 people, because it's so true, even 100 people using your platform to build a business that is in soul alignment with yourself. Because as artists, so much of the work we do, is survival between projects, or it can be. So this is really about creating something that's sustaining for yourself and allowing
and what was
yourself
the name of the
to get to your next
podcast?
level.
So people can
Voice Lessons. It's called Voice Lessons Podcast.
Voice Lessons Podcast. And they can find it on any of
we're on Instagram at Voice Lessons Podcast, and our URL is voicelessonspodcast.com.
Thank you, Kim, so much. And Rachel, where can people find you and what are you up to?
If you want to learn more about gun violence prevention, I would check out momsdemandaction.org. You can find me at Team Ev on Instagram. And that's where I'm at.
Thank you. And I want to thank you guys I shouldn't say guys, I'm trying to be much more politicized and my feminist power. Thank you, wonderful, powerful women, because language is powerful. One of my friends who's a really strong feminist kept saying, you have to stop referring to women as guys. And so I'm very aware of it now. So thank you, wonderful women, for coming out and sharing your experience. I'm telling you, I could talk to you women all day. And thank you for standing in your truth and being powerful and amazing women and raising amazing sons. And I can't wait to see what the world's going to look like with these amazing children coming into the world being raised by women like you. So I truly thank you. I thank Harborfront Center for giving me this platform to have these kind of conversations, TD Bank. I want to also shout out my co-producing partner, Ashley Mackenzie Barnes, who just keeps holding it down, and we just keep doing this amazing work. And we have another show coming up. Ashley's producing one. Is it Tuesday or Thursday, guys? Is it Tuesdays or Thursdays? I can't remember. I think it's Thursday. Tuesday. She's having another one on this platform on Tuesday night, so make sure you check that out at 7:30. And I have another one on Saturday at 7:30. And if you love what you're hearing, write to Harborfront. Tell them that you love it to keep us on, because we're only supposed to be on till July. But more than that, call TD and tell them to give us some more money so we can keep doing this. Because I want to keep talking, and I want to do this. So thank you, everyone, for supporting tonight. It's been an amazing show, and you can find me on Instagram at Black Girl in Love. Thank you ever so much. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.